Strategic planning retreats are awesome, and they also can turn into a big mess if they're not done effectively. In this video, I'm going to share with you the 3-part design of a strategic planning retreat so that it goes awesome and you get great ideas, lots of engagement, and a fantastic plan at the end. Strategic planning retreats are awesome. I love them. They're fun to lead. They're fun to attend. They can generate great ideas, and they can also devolve into a huge mess with no really good outcome. In this video, I'm going to share with you how to facilitate effectively a strategic planning retreat. We're going to start with the problems that strategic planning retreats often run into. What gets in the way, what messes them up. Then we're going to talk a little bit about the overarching solution, the big picture solution, and then delve into the 3 main categories of focus, as well as how to bring it all together in the end. I have led many strategic planning retreats in my life. I've led them for big corporations, for small businesses, and pretty much everything in between. And one thing that I can say is that they often turn into a big mess. And that's because a lot of different people sharing a lot of different opinions without a good enough structure. There's a famous quote that says, "Search the towns and search the cities, you'll find no statues of committees." And that's because people in a group often make, believe it or not, really bad decisions. And in fact, I was shocked to learn this. There's a lot of research that show that individuals come up with better ideas than groups do. But there are ways to capitalize on the group wisdom, on the intelligence of a collective. But you have to do it very mindfully and very carefully so that you don't devolve into some of the risks that you can get into, like groupthink, for example, where a lot of people hop on board to an idea, even if the idea isn't very good or is bad, actually. Another issue that a lot of strategic planning retreats face is that people withhold information. So there might be a few people there with really great ideas, and for whatever reason, they decide not to share them. Maybe they're shy and they don't like to speak up. Maybe there's someone in the room they don't like. Maybe they just feel like they might get rejected or attacked for their crazy idea. So one of the biggest challenges in an environment like this is getting everyone to participate and bring their very best ideas to the table. Finally, another issue is having unrealistic expectations, or even worse, having no expectations at all. So on the one hand, unrealistic expectations, you might just think, okay, all our problems are going to get solved in this strategic planning retreat. I mean, we're going to be spending 3 days together working on all these things. Of course, this will get fixed there. Now, it may very well be that that is the right platform and that right location to get some big ideas, some big plans, some big problems solved. But the fact is, without really good structure, that's probably not going to happen. On the other hand, having no expectations at all, going in there just, willy-nilly, expecting it to figure itself out. Like, these are 2 extremes, but they're 2 extremes that illustrate some of the big problems that I see. And again, it all comes back to, and the big solution to all of this is structure. Having a great structure for your strategic planning retreat. And I'm going to talk about that in 3 parts now. And before I get to these 3 pieces of the great structure that I'm going to share, do me a favor and go ahead and subscribe to my channel, and that way you'll get notifications every time I release a new video, which I do often. The first piece of facilitating a strategic planning retreat is to design it. It's the design and the planning of it up front. How are you going to structure this event to get the outcomes that you want? One of the problems, as I mentioned earlier, is lack of structure. And so this is where you actually look at, all right, what are my intentions? What are the objectives of this retreat? In other words, actually the best word is, what are the outcomes that we have to create? Now, if we work, Stephen Covey always said, begin with the end in mind. So you want to think about, okay, what would be an outcome of this retreat that would be stellar? The best possible outcome. What would we have at the end of it? And then from backwards from there, you can start to design the retreat that's going to achieve those outcomes. So for example, let's say that your ideal outcome of this retreat is that you end up with a strategic plan for the whole year, right? So go ahead and outline what a strategic plan would look like. What are all the elements that you'd want to have figured out? And then take those elements and map them onto a retreat structure. So let's say a strategic plan has a vision for the year, a mission, projections, it has team growth, it has all these different elements. Well, go ahead and set aside a block of time throughout your strategic retreat for each item. So that is the design phase where you set the intentions of the event. Another thing to consider as you're designing is how are you going to get people to work together effectively? So one of the things I like to do at the beginning of a retreat when you're setting up the outline for it or the structure of the days is to look at ways for people to bond early on. So one of the first things you'll want to do is have people connect and bond with each other. And that might look like going a little bit beyond what's business, what's professional, and even get into a little bit of more personal stuff, like asking people what their favorite food is or where they graduated from high school or things like that. What I like to do when I'm designing my retreat is setting up the time frame. So if I have, for example, a 3-day retreat, what I like to do is say, okay, day one, what's the theme of day one? What is the outcome that I need from day one? Then I do the same thing with day two. All right, now coming out of day one, knowing what we know, having these things, what needs to happen in day two? What's the theme of day two? And then again into day three. All right, now that we're leaving, this is the last day, what do we need to leave with? What do we need to complete? And then I like to do sessions that are no more than 90 minutes long. I found that 90 minutes seems to be kind of the upper limit of how much people can engage and connect without starting to think about food or bathroom breaks or checking their phone. Speaking of checking their phones, you might want to have certain guidelines and rules as you design your event. Guidelines and agreements include standards of behavior. How are people going to show up? Are they allowed to check their phone? Do they need to check their phone or leave it outside of the room? One of the things that we do in all of our retreats is we have a cell phone basket and everybody puts their phone in at the beginning of each session. And then when we go on break, they can take their phone out. So these are some ways that you can encourage people to stay connected, and you can design these features into the retreat up front. Some other guidelines and agreements to think about are how are people going to gain the floor? If people want to talk, do they raise their hand? Is there some other signal? Are they allowed to share? Or do you want to save the input sessions for specific times? Is it a free-for-all? Is it open season, open format? Or is there more of a structure to when and how people participate? Another thing to consider is using smaller groups instead of just everything in one large group. What we found is that actually individuals and small groups often come up with better ideas and make better decisions than bigger groups. So you can take advantage of that by splitting people into small groups for ideation and brainstorming, and then bringing them back together in order to share what they got and to see the whole wide variety of different ideas that were created. Another thing to think about is what kind of activities you're going to use. One of the things that people don't like about a lot of strategic planning retreats is that they can be boring. It's a lot of talk, a lot of business all the time. If you can mix that up and make it more fun, make it more physical even. We do a brainstorming process where people use sticky notes, write their ideas on sticky notes and put them on a board, and then through the conversation we move the sticky notes around the board. And so that's a really fun, interactive way of brainstorming that people actually enjoy and they get really into. And then finally, one last thing to think about is limiting the time available for each task. One of the big problems that I run into, and that others do too when they're doing these programs, is that things can get off schedule. They can take a lot longer because you didn't anticipate more people wanting to share, and people taking the floor, and people going on and telling stories. So here's my advice. There's this thing called Parkinson's Law. Parkinson's Law is that work expands to fill the time available for its completion. So in order to limit the time available, you need to create strict guidelines around time. And here's what's interesting about Parkinson's Law. We've learned that actually when you limit the time available for people to do a task, it actually improves the quality of their work. They do better work when they have a shorter, compressed amount of time to do it in. So I recommend limiting the time substantially. So instead of giving people 30 minutes to think of something, Give them 5 minutes and see what happens. Put that pressure on and light a fire and see how it combusts into greater ideas. So the delivery is the second part of designing a great retreat. The delivery is all about how you're going to show up that day and how you're going to request that other people show up. Now, I've already talked a little bit about that in the design, but in the delivery is how you establish the ground rules. And you want to do that early on, right at the beginning, and gain agreement. Does everybody agree with these ground rules? Say yes. Does anybody not agree with these ground rules? Please share. What other ground rules may you want to add to the experience? What you'll find is that sometimes people in the audience, people in your group, will give you really good ways to even make a better experience. Another thing to consider is creating channels for feedback. Creating channels for feedback that don't undermine what you're creating. For example, if somebody's having a problem or somebody's like really struggling or somebody's triggered or angry or something like that, make sure that you have a channel for that to get expressed. And you might not want that channel to be in front of everybody. So you might even want to designate somebody at the beginning as the person who's going to handle the challenges, as the person to go to if you're struggling with something, if you're having a problem with the way things are going here. And that way you have a person like a middleman that can receive that, right? Somebody that's understanding, that listens deeply, and then can bring it to you or bring it to the group in a way that's more neutral. Another thing to consider having, which I absolutely believe in 100%, is to have somebody recording. And I don't just mean a digital recording, voice or a video, but also having someone taking notes, considering what are these outcomes that you wanted to get. Having somebody taking notes right into your strategic plan report or your strategic plan rough outline might be really beneficial. And another thing to be thinking about as you're delivering is recording the decisions that are being made. I know this seems kind of obvious, but I can't tell you how many times I personally have done one of these strategic planning sessions, and then 3 weeks later, a month later, I was like, what did we decide about that? I know we talked about it, but what was the final outcome of that conversation? So making sure that whoever's recording the notes and organizing all of that is also recording the decisions that are made, because at the end of the experience, we need to digest everything that happened. And so we take this recording, take these notes, take everything that was created during the strategic planning retreat and organize it into some sort of debrief or follow-up that records the decisions made, responsibilities, who's doing what, and by when. So deadline. This is really, if you don't do this, all of this might be completely irrelevant, because this exists in the present moment, but if we don't record it and capture it and do something with it, then it wasn't worthwhile at all. I hope this was helpful for you. I know it was only a short video and there's so much more that I could talk about when it comes to strategic planning. But if this was a good enough taste for you and you want to go deeper, then feel free to go ahead and check out my website, superstaractivator.com, and see if and how maybe I can support you with planning, designing, even facilitating your next strategic planning retreat. See you soon.